Pro from Pretoria. Is everything all right? People talk, say things.
Hello?
Why didn't you tell me it was out of order? I suppose you think that's funny.
I'm not allowed out the front door.
Who says you weren't?
Them.
Who?
Them.
It was terrible out there. I could hear breathing.
We told you.
Are you worried about the man?
They hate us. That's the truth. They want to kill and torture every one of us. You can see it in their eyes.
Come now, Frederick. Do you dream about unholy things?
I really don't know what's going on here. There's something wrong, and that's a fact.
Wait. What did you dream last night? This manifestation of evil. You must be delivered from evil.
I better be going.
I'll see you out. What will your testimony be at the inquest tomorrow?
The truth, I suppose.
Truth is relative. Even off the force, a fella can use a little help. Have you decided what line of work you'll be going into?
I only have the one trade.
What do you mean?
I'm a cop. A detective. I'm going private, that's all.
Who with? The Pinkertons? You got something lined up?
Just my own little agency.
I see. When were you planning on getting started?
Well, right away.
Oh, that's a shame. That really is.
How so?
Oh, the paperwork on these matters. A goddamn shame. Red tape. Sometimes an application for a license can be turned down for the most trivial of reasons. For no reason at all, actually.
So that's how it is.
I'll tell you how it is, Mr. Heller. Go out of the department under a cloud and you tie yourself up in a police scandal. Months go by, and you're not going to get your private detective's license till it's over, till maybe, not never.
Suppose I agree to corroborate Lang and Miller's story.
I'm good at cutting red tape.
How good?
You'll have your license tomorrow, good.
And when the trial comes up, suppose I pull a double cross. Suppose I tell a different story, like the real one.
I don't think you do that. You're not a stupid man. Licenses get revoked for no good reason sometimes. The mayor giveth, and the mayor taketh the fuck away.
Shit. God damn it. I'll do it.
Thought you might. Sergeant Miller, get yourself a good night's sleep, Mr. Heller. Nate, you have a busy day tomorrow. Sergeant Miller here will see you home.
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
I've heard it said before, like, it was a very smart man named Robert Meyer Burnett who said the currency of our current age is authenticity. And it's so true.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination and the perhaps never to be defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right. Me, Robert Meyer Burnett. And once again, I'm Robcasting from the Robservatory to you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is, believe it or not, Robservations 1001. Episode 1001. Can't believe it. Unbelievable. Don't even know what to say. I just want to say thank all of you. I'm sorry I couldn't include everybody in the 1000 show. I had a lot of people respond, but it was great. I want to thank everybody. It was so nice to see a lot of you who I've never seen face to face. My friend Carl, I consider him a friend because we know each other through this channel, but he's from the P&W, and he lives in Ballard. It was good to see him. Can't wait to come up there, and we'll break bread and have a brewski and a few whiskey shots or whatever you want to shoot. Well, within reason. I'm talking about liquid, nothing else. Shooting meaning shots. In Seattle, you never know, right? Mother Love Bone, Chloe Dancer, Crown of Thorns. Anyway, that's an obscure reference. Not really, if you're a Cameron Crowe fan or if you like the Seattle scene from the late 80s. Anyway, actually, Chloe Dancer, Crown of Thorns is a great tune. Well, 2 tunes. Check it out. Anyway, don't even know what I'm saying. I'm rambling. It's my first show of the next millennium of shows. That's why, remember, the year 2000 was not really the change of millennium. 2001 was the change of the millennium. Hence, 2001, A Space Odyssey. That's why Kubrick didn't call his movie 2000. Anyway, I've got so much to deal with, so much to talk to about with you guys. I think I wanted to I got a letter today. I got a letter and wanted to read it. I got a lot of letters that I got for the 1000th that I'm going to get to this week. But this one comes from our own Darth Plato. And I thought it was really interesting. Food for thought. Hey, Rob, not a letter, but it could be the basis of one. I don't know. I think it's a letter. It's a letter to me. What I find most interesting about this show, meaning Dune Prophecy, despite its disappointments, is the way that the story's touching down on something that had long puzzled me about Frank Herbert's Dune. How did the Bene Gesserit know that generations of gene manipulation will result in a special man that can do all the things attributed to the Kwisatz Haderach? Where does the concept of Kwisatz Haderach even come from? This show could be trying to show that the first Kwisatz Haderach came about accident or chance. Ergo, the Bene Gesserit ought to be able to replicate it. So is this super being a thing that's happened before? That alone makes the show interesting to me. You've already pointed out the absurd depiction of the Butlerian Jihad as Skynet Jihad, so I won't retread it. By the way, notice that the show doesn't use the word jihad. The voice is a secret weapon, rarely to be used and never to be seen. Jessica says this to Thufa. Dune Prophet Thufa Howard, who should have been in Dune 2. Prophecy trivializes the voice to mere mind control instead of subtle manipulation, which is what the voice truly is. Villeneuve's Dune breaks the concept in the Harkonnen Thopter scene. When freed, Jessica says, "Kill him," as if that's all there is to it. But in the book, the voice is used to manipulate or convince the one man to kill the other man. No need to fight over me, not merely kill him. The story and world of Dune is very high concept, so it's really best as a niche thing, not a general audience experience at all. For a general audience to experience Dune is like sitting through philosophy class at school. It's going to strike most people as boring. Dune was first released in 1965, and it was initially a poor showing. It gained a cult status from college-age kids that were in college between 65 and the early 70s abouts. Try talking to people who were in school in those years and ask them about Dune. It's an interesting experience. Dune touches down on a lot of themes that were important to 60s kids. Dune is an acquired taste. Trying to generalize it just diminishes it. This wasn't meant to be an exhaustive critique, but I wanted to say something off the top of my head, and I doubt that I would be able to do that inside of 7 minutes. Take care, Darth Plato. Well, Darth Plato, you always have something interesting to say. He is, after all, the official philosopher of this channel. But I think that I think you're not wrong. I mean, look, the thing about a lot of Dune, a lot of science fiction is very heady, and it deals with concepts that aren't easily articulated, much less shown. And I think, if anything, that's been one of the problems with, David Lynch talked about that, how it was problematic to adapt the book. And of course, everybody who really knows Dune is really upset with how Chani was treated in Dune 2. Their relationship showing Chani as more of a girl boss who understood that Paul is not the Messiah and ran off in a little petulant manner might not be the way into Dune Messiah, but we'll see. I don't really know if we know what the status of Dune Messiah is yet, but look, I'm hoping to see it. I hope it's great. I've enjoyed Villeneuve's Dune more as like a Dune tone poem. they're extraordinary achievements in verisimilitude and all of that, and I love the actors. My problem with those films is there's not a lot of scenes. The scenes where people talk to each other are just cut to the bare minimum. I mean, I could hang out with those people for a long time, and I could have watched a 4-hour version of Dune and listened to more of the talking and the politicking and all of that. I would like to have seen more of that. But, you know, I enjoy Dune. I am not so much enjoying Dune Prophecy. Look, if you're going to make a show that takes place 10,000 years before the movies that people are familiar with, you have to make me believe that it's 10,000 years. I mean, just think about human history, our history. One of the problems that I really have when I'm watching a science fiction film or watching something that is asking me to believe in that kind of a time frame, like when Star Trek Discovery jumped 1,000 years in the future, as I've said, it's the most uncreative and unimaginative future I could possibly imagine. Because other than warp nacelles not being connected to the starships anymore, which, by the way, just was dumb. The design work is supposed to look cool, I guess, but I don't buy it. Didn't buy it. And I don't like that I didn't buy it, but I didn't buy it. So what can you say? Anyway, didn't like that. But Darth Plato, I agree. The Butlerian Jihad, it's like the concepts of what Frank Herbert was talking about. Like, it's interesting to me how pop culture shapes our understanding of things. Anyone who's a science fiction novel reader, or you've even watched science fiction films, you know, back into the 70s, I would encourage everybody. On one hand, it's a hoot, but on the other hand, it's really interesting. Look up the 1970s film Colossus, the Forbin Project. Colossus has been in the news. Pictures have been on social media because I guess Elon Musk in Tennessee is building some kind of a super AI, and they're calling it Colossus. Well, that came right out of the film, which is actually quite a good movie. Eric Braeden stars as the man who created a computer that lords over us all. As dated as it is in certain respects, I mean, they built this thing into the Grand Canyon. To think that you have a computer that big is kind of funny, but it's something to look into. And by the way, Colossus, the Forbin Project, was also based on it was based on the first of 3 science fiction novels, one called Colossus, one is called Colossus and the Crab, but I forget what the third one is. But yeah, so look into that. All very interesting, but seeing the Butlerian Jihad, a war against AI that looks like we're fighting Skynet, is such a failure of imagination. And, you know, AI is going to be more, I think that we're going to be dealing with AI. The movie Her, Spike Jonze's movie Her, I've often talked about it as one of the more accurate depictions of what's going to happen if the singularity comes and AI becomes sentient. We'll see. I don't know. But unfortunately, if you're going to delve into classic science fiction, it's probably best that you don't emulate movies like, say The Terminator, because that's not what the Butlerian Jihad was really all about. It was the whole point that computers were being allowed to do, artificial intelligence, the thinking for mankind. And that was not something that we should ever allow. But how do you depict that excitingly on a screen? Maybe, I don't know, cooler heads in mind will prevail, I'm sure, and tell me how that is. But anyway, I want to tell everyone that beginning tomorrow, we're going to start sending Act 1 of True Noir to the press, the thing that I've been working on for the last 6 months. You've been hearing about it for a year. I will say this, I'm going to make, if you have a YouTube channel and would like to review it, that would be great. This was a truly independent production. And in terms of something that all the things I've ever worked on in my life, I haven't had as much control over as True Noir. So True Noir to me might be the biggest expression of my creative ability. And you'll have to decide if I have any creative ability if you listen to it. I know it's not a movie, it's an audio drama. But from teaming up with someone like Max Allan Collins and recognizing the greatness of his 10 scripts and knowing what I had with that That was a huge gift given to me by Max to be able to bring his book to life. The first of the Nathan Heller books that he adapted has been a tremendous gift to me, which I will always be forever grateful to Max Allen Collins for trusting me in doing it. But I'm really proud of it. And the way we're going to release it is next Friday. Wherever you get your premium podcasts, we are releasing Act 1 of True Noir, The Assassination of Anton Cermak, has a 3-act structure. So the first 3 episodes are Act 1, the middle 4 episodes are Act 2, and the final 3 episodes are Act 3, just like a motion picture is structured with 3 acts. So we're making the first 3 episodes available, the Nitty Raid, Visiting Hours, and Merry Christmas, Mr. Heller, beginning December 13th. And those will be available for everybody. You can purchase them, unfortunately, because, it's an indie project and we had to pay for it ourselves. We have to pay ourselves back and our investors back. And so every episode's $2.99, but I promise you, worth it. And if they're not worth it, you can come back and I'm not going to give you a refund, but you can tell me I'm an asshole or I'm a talentless hack, whichever you prefer. You're welcome to do that. But look for it. It means a lot to me. Your support means a lot to me. And I think the project, I put my heart and soul into this, and it truly is an indie project. We have no affiliation with studios or anything like that. I've looked at people like Eric July and what he's done with the Rippaverse, and I thought, you know what? That's impressive. And I've always wanted to do something like that I had control over, that no one was going to come screaming at me we stole their IP, like other crowdfunded projects I've been involved with. But yeah, so look for that next week, and we're going to start sending out I can't call it a screener, I guess I'll call it a listener to critics. And if you are interested in reviewing it for any outlets or your YouTube channel, send me a missive at rmburnett1701@gmail.com. Tell me where you're from and what you want to say, and I'll make sure you can hear the listener. So anyway, to get into the topic at hand. So, I've been appearing on Chris Gore's show Versus on the Film Threat channel on Mondays pretty regularly. And he brought up an article that I was going to do a Robservations with as well. We kind of covered it on Versus, but I wanted to cover it here myself because I'd been thinking about covering it even before we did it on Versus. And it was an article that was published in Variety. And it was, let's see when it was published. When was it published? It was published on November 30th. And it's something I've been thinking about. I've been talking to a lot of people about. And so I wanted to cover it on this show. And I think I'll just jump into the article now, which is Hollywood's addiction to sequels cannibalizing its future? And this is by Owen Gleiberman, again from Variety on November 30th, 2024. The top 10 grossing movies of the year are all sequels. They're now sustaining the industry, but they're in danger of consuming it. And this is Owen Gleiberman. The other day, as I was looking up a data point on boxofficemojo.com, I noticed something that shocked me. The top 10 grossing movies of 2024, from Inside Out 2 to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, are all sequels. Every goddamn one of them. Wicked and Moana 2 will soon break into the top 10, and though Wicked isn't technically a sequel, when you consider how many people have seen the original Broadway show, the truth is that the movie version, as much as any other sequel, is a kind of the same but also different follow-up to our gargantuan known quantity. It's all part of a deja vu entertainment culture. The reason I was shocked by the fact that I could be shocked by this is that Hollywood has been famously awash in sequels since the dawn of the Reagan era. Making jokes about the creative bankruptcy of films with Roman numerals after their title was a wrung-out cliche by 1985. Back then, a sequel rarely lived up to the original. From Staying Alive, which I love, I'm a Staying Alive apologist, to Fletch Lives, from Beverly Hills Cop 2, which is pretty good, by the way, to Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, which really isn't. Almost all of them were tacky cash grabs. I don't know, I wouldn't go that far. Yet once in a while, you'd see a worthy one, like Aliens or Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Now, of course, they tend to be much better. In our time, the definition of a sequel one that audiences think of them, has fundamentally changed. Good, bad, or indifferent, they're no longer automatically chintzy rehashes. They're often part of franchise empires. And even when not, they tend to be marked by a certain ambition, an impulse to aim higher and spin themselves less cynically than the old sequels did. The top 10 movies of 2024 offer a perfect snapshot of that. Inside Out 2, the top-grossing movie of the year, is an enchantingly awesome sequel to the last great original Pixar film. Deadpool and Wolverine is nasty, spectacular, quip-laden fun. Far better than Deadpool 2. Despicable Me 4 is arguably the best entry in that series since the original. Beetlejuice is a piece of gothic prankster fan service, but on that level it delivers. Dune Part 2 in the eyes of Dune heads is superior to Dune. I'm allergic to all Dune films. This is Owen Gleiberman, but whatever. Twisters isn't nearly as good as Twister, but it's good enough to get by. Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire is meh. Kung Fu Panda 4 is meh. Bad Boys Ride or Die throws off surprising sparks of witty energy. And the human-free prequel Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes proved to be one of the most captivating entries in that series. Hollywood sequel culture, in other words, is in reasonably healthy creative shape. And given how much it's now dominating commercially in an industry that's existentially threatened enough to need every theatrical hit it can get, no one in their right mind would dispute the need to make these films. Sequels are luring people into the theaters in a way that most acclaimed movies of the year, from Anora to Conclave, are not. Where would the current movie landscape be without them? And yet, there's something a little skewed about this picture. I can't recall a moment when sequels crushed the box office this definitively. 15 out of the year's top 20 grossing movies are sequels. The sequelization of Hollywood in the 80s represented a trend too neurotic in its reality that the industry is becoming addicted to surefire hits, had grown more comfortable looking backward than forward. Maybe that was always true to a degree. In the studio system era, Westerns weren't sequels, but hundreds, thousands of them were built out of the same rawhide parts. Superhero movies, in many ways, are the contemporary equivalent. Hollywood has always cannibalized itself, but the thing is, it hasn't just cannibalized itself. The contradiction of sequel culture and the threat of it is that if all you rely on is concepts from the past, you're not going to produce enough of a future. To put it in the industry's corrupt terms, there won't be enough hit movies to make sequels to. Sequel culture contains, by definition, an element of non-sustainability. And when it comes to the trend of making sequels to 40-year-old movies, how many times can we really go back and strip mine the primal nostalgia of films like Top Gun and Beetlejuice? Tom Cruise is said to be trying to line up a sequel to Days of Thunder. What's next? Ridley Scott's Legend 2? We would all like that. I just don't know if Ridley would like to make it or if we'd like to see Ridley's version of it. Sequel culture, like a lot of addictions, is exciting and depressing at the same time. We want that mainline hit of deja vu narcotic, yet with very rare exceptions, we can't go back again. Not fully. Not really. Just consider these super ambitious, aiming high sequels this year that didn't entirely work. Not because there was any cynicism to their making, but because the movies they were following up were so potent in their originality. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, was an epic prequel to a movie that was better off not having one. Joker, Folie 2, spent most of its courtroom scenes chewing over the split personality dazzle of Joker. And Gladiator 2 may have cast the wrong lead actor, but what actor could have matched what Russell Crowe brought off in Gladiator? We all know the fabled list of sequels that are powerfully artful in their own right, to the point of possibly being greater than the movies they were sequels to. The Godfather Part 2, The Empire Strikes Back, The Dark Knight. But the dirty truth is that you can just about count that list of movies on one hand. Sequel culture craves that deja vu nirvana, but like all addictions, it provides a high that eats away at you at the same time. It's sustaining without being nourishing. As the movie industry fights to survive, any film that helps it do so probably deserves a tip of the hat. But the industry can't ultimately survive unless it figures out a way to make movie culture survive. It will do that only by keeping its eye on the road ahead more than on the rearview mirror. Well, I thought this was a great point to bring up. And, it's funny, in the 70s, there were not a lot of sequels. Godfather 2 was an exception, which is one of the most extraordinary movies ever made, which, by the way, as one of our letter writers points out, is coming up on its 50th birthday. Godfather 2 is going to be 50. And The Conversation, which Coppola made the same year, Godfather came out December 18th, I think, of 1974. And his film, The Conversation, came out in April of 74. Coppola put out The Conversation and Godfather 2 in the same year. I mean, not since Spielberg released Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. I mean, those are two directors. Has anyone ever done that in the same year? I don't know. When I was growing up, of course, I enjoyed Jaws 2. I think Jaws 2 is look, it doesn't come close to the original, but as a sequel that brings back Amity and brings back Roy Scheider, it's pretty good. I like Jaws 2. Came out in 78. I enjoyed it. I have a 4K version of it, thanks to the lovely Emma Bannon, who got me the Steelbook from the UK. Thank you, Emma. And then, of course, who thought a Star Wars sequel would work? It was iffy. Empire Strikes Back, one of the greatest sequels of all time, was made. And then a year later, even though it came out 2 years later in the United States, George Miller followed up Mad Max with Mad Max 2, a.k.a. The Road Warrior, which was extraordinary. But if you watch Mad Max and you watch The Road Warrior, a.k.a. Mad Max 2, they're very different kinds of movies. There's a filmmaker growing within them, and it's really interesting to see the Mad Max saga. He co-directed with George Ogilvy Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and then we had to wait 30 years to get Fury Road and then Furiosa. I think Furiosa might be rediscovered. I think it's a better movie than it got. It deserved a lot better at the box office. But here's the thing. I think there's something that people aren't talking about in terms of Hollywood. Now, if you think about it, sequels don't require anyone at the corporate level to make any kind of a risky decision. Now, I understand the business of Hollywood now, how Hollywood works, is the studios, which are mostly publicly held companies, have an obligation to their shareholders, so they have to do what Wall Street wants and what the tech world wants. They want very big returns as quickly as possible. Understandably so, because movies are expensive. Even the lowest budget of the studio movies is still $100,000 or $100 million movie. I mean, I remember the days when James Cameron was making Terminator 2 in a very compacted schedule. They made it very quickly. That was the first $100 million movie. That was a little over 30 years ago. Now it just seems like studios can only make $100 million plus movies. I never thought we would live in that world. And yet, it is still possible for studios to create new franchises. The problem is, that's risky. And I am of the opinion, I don't think there's many people, especially the development executives at the studios, because the studios haven't proven this at all. I honestly don't think that the people that are working at the Hollywood studios, and when I was at Warner Brothers as a young whippersnapper, many people know I worked as an art department PA on my first film, which was Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and after that, I got a job at Warner Brothers under then Senior Vice President of Physical Production, Bill Young. I was the first of what they call the management trainee, and there were three of us, Jamie Johnson, John Labib, and myself, and we were kind of brought in as young whippersnappers to learn how the studio interfaces with all the various productions that they were making. Like Warner Brothers would have, the structure at Warner Brothers was we did not control anything that Warner Brothers made. Whatever was going to get made. We had no say over what the studio wanted to make. Once a project was greenlit, that was a whole different set of creative executives and the president, Mark Canton and Bob Daly, Terry Semmel, Mark Canton, Bruce Berman, Lucy Fisher, all the people at the top, they would decide what movies Warner Brothers made. And then once that greenlit was given, then the physical production department would take over, and we would actually facilitate the making of the film. And I got to see all that from the inside. Trust me, as a 22-year-old, having that, it was the most eye-opening, amazing experience. And I one day I'll write my memoirs and I'll talk all about that. But it was an incredible thing. But back then, there were sequels being made, yes, but Warner Brothers was making. I wasn't there at a great time. Not a lot of the movies we made. I mean, nothing but trouble. The Dan Aykroyd film got made when I was there, and boy, was that watching people wring their hands when the dailies would come in. That was an experience. But movies like Bonfire of the Vanities got made when I was there. You know, Doc Hollywood got made. My Blue Heaven got made. But other movies like Defending Your Life got made. Brian De Palma's Bonfire of the Vanities got made. That was interesting to watch. Clint Eastwood's The Rookie got made. Lethal Weapon 3. There was all kinds of things that I got to see the production of. They weren't all great, but they were very diverse. Warner Brothers was making an incredibly diverse slate of movies, and not a lot of them were sequels. I mean, they were trying to make when I was there. Right before I started, Batman, Tim Burton's Batman had opened, and they'd begun early development on what became Batman Returns. Sam Hamm. I still think Sam Hamm's original draft for Batman Returns was a banger. It was, I mean, they couldn't have made it. It would cost $300 million at the time, but it was great. But the thing is, the people that were running the studio then understood they were looking for, back then, the spec script sale market was huge. That's how movies like The Last Boy Scout got made. Shane Black, coming off the success of the Lethal Weapon movies, wrote The Last Boy Scout, and as a video on my channel talks about, it sold for $1.75 million. Original script, original characters, and the spec sale, meaning scripts written on speculation, were huge. And that's what Hollywood was looking for. You had all these writers, these known writers that were putting out banger after banger after banger, you know, and it gave rise to the rock star writer. But you had to recognize if what they were writing was good. And I maintain I have not seen much evidence coming out of Hollywood studios that the people running the studios know the difference. They're not looking for original scripts, which means, like anyone else, if you're just making sequels, in my mind, you're not doing your job. Because where does any IP come from? You know, in order to make Beetlejuice, somebody had to greenlight Tim Burton's Beetlejuice almost 40 years ago. Well, those people aren't at the studio anymore. They don't know. I would maintain that we live in a as much as there's so much to consume these days, people who work in the entertainment business know less about film history than ever before. At every level of the studio, from my mind, not a lot of people know their jobs, or at least they don't know movies. They don't know how to sell movies anymore. Movie marketing is terrible. They don't know what makes a good story. They don't know what makes a good movie. They don't even know how to make an actual movie. Like, how do you get on set? How do you budget and schedule a movie? You know, they hire people that presumably know how to do it. Obviously, I've talked about people on this channel that I'm a big fan of. Steve Asbell, who I like to call the quiet king of franchises, over at 20th Century Studios, made The First Omen for not a lot of money. It might not have done as well theatrically as they had hoped, but it certainly has a longer life in ancillary markets and, of course, on streaming. It's quite a good movie, and you should check it out. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes did very, very well. He made it for $30 million less than War of the Planet of the Apes. And then, of course, he had Alien Romulus, which also did quite well and was made for what they call a price, less than $100 million, which is great. And, you know, Steve is now, because of his successes, he's going to branch out. He's making an original movie with filmmaker Ben and David Grabinski, and it's got a great cast. We'll see how that works out. But in my mind, the motion picture studios need to do something that they used to do all the time. They need to go back and they need to start generating brand new IP. Now, how do you do that? Well, you have to find great scripts and you have to find great material. And the thing is, most people don't even know how to write a good screenplay anymore. You know, the people today, there's very few people today left, especially younger people, that know how to write well, that know how to write screenplays well. There's a lot of people out there that are doing it. Now, what happened was, you know, you'd make some indie movies like Christopher Nolan. He made Following, and then he made Memento. And then the studio tapped him, like, here's an up-and-coming director. Now, did they give him a $200 million franchise picture? No. They gave him Insomnia, which had 2 stars in it, but it was a remake of a Norwegian movie? Swedish movie? No, I forget. But it was a studio programmer, you know, and they saw a guy who was really talented, and look at where that went for Warner Brothers. You know, after Insomnia worked well, they gave him Batman. It was a moribund. After Batman and Robin, it was laying fallow. Batman was moribund. It was who knew if it was ever going to be able to be viable again. But they found a very talented, creative, smart guy in Christopher Nolan, and they said, would you like to take a crack at Batman? And him and his brother did. And we got Batman Begins. And, you know, that was an amazing thing. And then if you look at what Warner Brothers did with Christopher Nolan, they allowed him to make a movie like Batman Begins, and then he goes and makes The Prestige, which was an adaptation of a book. That movie never would have got made unless Christopher Nolan wanted to make it, I'm sure. And the studio today, would they make that movie? They would if it was Christopher Nolan, and then he makes The Dark Knight. Amazing. Then after The Dark Knight, then he can go make an Inception. He buys himself, and then, of course, the Warner Brothers marketing department takes all the credit in the world for Inception. The studio didn't know it was good. They were terrified of that movie. And then, of course, he makes Dark Knight Rises, which, you know, we can all have our problems with it, and we do. I think it's epic, but I don't think a lot of it works, but I still like it. And then he convinces Warner Brothers to make Dunkirk. But because he's Christopher Nolan, he makes a war movie that makes $500 million. That's what the studios should be doing. Now, if you think about how many Christopher Nolans are there? I mean, I've often maintained that a lot of the people that might have gone 30 years ago into filmmaking have instead developed very creative careers making TikTok videos. And I'm not being facetious. There's a lot of incredibly creative and unique filmmaking happening on user-generated content outlets. And when people when you can make a TikTok video that's cool and goes viral and gets millions and millions of views, I mean, that's what filmmakers would want for their movies, and very few filmmakers got the views, especially indie filmmakers, even in the entire lifetime that they worked. I mean, if you ask John Cassavetes, hey, John, you know, would you have loved to have Woman Under the Influence seen by 100 million people? You think he would have said no? And, of course, a lot of you are asking yourselves, who is John Cassavetes and what is Woman Under the Influence? Do yourself a favor. Seek it out. It's probably on the Criterion Channel, or you can get the Blu-ray box set, 5 films by John Cassavetes, out from the Criterion Collection. But the thing is, it doesn't make it wrong that we now have, I mean, TikTok, short-form internet videos have only existed for, less than 15 years now? That would be like Hollywood movies that started in, say, 1900. You had some of the first features being made in the early 1900s, like there was an Australian movie called The Kelly Gang, which is considered like one of the first features that was made 1904. I mean, if you think about it, we're basically, as far as internet videos and all the things that people have, we're only 15 years into that. So we're about where Hollywood was in 1915, we are now with internet videos. And who knows where they're going to go with generative AI when people can, you know, prompt and have themselves star in their own Star Wars movie. In 5 years, it's all coming. But I do believe, like Ben Affleck said, that generative AI is it's not going to be able to come up with something entirely new. But I don't understand why all the studios, why isn't Sony, Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount, why aren't they bringing in new people like the 2 brothers that made Talk to Me? You know, that movie came out of 2 kids that were cutting their teeth in unique ways in social media, ended up making their first feature and Talk to Me. Why isn't more of that happening? I mean, if you think about it, Ridley Scott's is 87. Clint Eastwood's 94. And Juror Number 12 was actually finally caught up with it. A really good movie. Beautifully shot. Clearly made by a very storied filmmaker. I mean, Clint Eastwood's directed over 50 movies. Hitchcock only directed 53. I don't know if... Maybe he's done 50 movies. I don't know if Clint Eastwood's caught Hitchcock yet. But still, why aren't the studios... I mean, what's interesting to me is Blumhouse, A24... These are companies that are nurturing filmmakers. We have one of the things that I most want to see is Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. I haven't seen it, but by all accounts, it's a new classic, horror classic for the ages. Now, you could say, well, Rob, Nosferatu is a remake. Well, it is, but it's never been remade. Look, when John Badham made Dracula in 79, I know it was coming off a Broadway play, but still, I mean, there'd been many Dracula movies, but John Badham's approach to Dracula was really interesting, and he was coming off the heels of the movies he'd made in the 70s, and another movie you might have heard of called Saturday Night Fever. He made Dracula after that, and then, of course, in the 80s, another director, John Badham, who had two really good movies, now that I think about it, in 1983, he had both War Games and Blue Thunder come out. Perhaps War Games and Blue Thunder are not the conversation in Godfather 2, nor are they Schindler's List and Jurassic Park. But I would say this, War Games and Blue Thunder are really good studio movies. Blue Thunder rules, by the way. Where's that 4K? And have War Games. Where's Blue Thunder? But, you know, a director like, if you're thinking about Robert Eggers, he makes The Witch. One of my favorite, not just horror films, but films of the last 20 years. His control of atmosphere is amazing. So you have Robert Eggers making The Witch. He makes The Lighthouse. He makes The Northman. All original films, very original. Now he does his own original take on Nosferatu. He is a master filmmaker that's and thank God after The Northman, which, by the way, The Northman's a banger, but it was $90 million and it didn't really make a lot of money, but he was able to get Nosferatu off the ground, so I hope Nosferatu does really well. Damien Chazelle, another, I think, a wonderful filmmaker, you know, going from Whiplash to La La Land to First Man, and then, of course, you know, to Babylon, which I think Babylon's going to be rediscovered. I think Babylon, there's a lot to love in that movie. But these are guys that are lucky because they're being allowed and afforded the opportunity to make original movies. But still, Hollywood does, in fact, need hits. And I wanted to talk about an example of a franchise that I think is what is the kind of thing that Hollywood needs to be looking for and doing more of. Now, there are producers out there that are extremely good at finding spec scripts. And I think one of the best in the business right now is Roy Lee. Roy Lee, who I talk about a lot on this channel, I admire him, and everyone knows I know him a little bit. I don't, you know, it's kind of like when Oliver Reed, you knew Marcus Aurelius? I didn't say I knew him. I said he touched my shoulder once. That's kind of how I know Roy Lee. A little bit more than that. But the thing about Roy Lee is Roy Lee has one of the best noses for scripts of any production company, any person, the things he gets involved with. Now, he gets involved as an executive producer. He makes the deal. You know, I think he's getting more creatively involved. But just right now, watch the trailer for Companion. If you haven't seen the trailer for Companion, check it out. I read that script. Again, low-budget movie, contained environment, banger of a script. I don't know where he found it, banger of a script. You know, Zach Cregan, Zach, who made Barbarian. Roy Lee found that one. Now, Zach is over at Warner Brothers. They made a big deal for his new movie, Weapon. Weapon is coming out, as I like to call it, maybe the Pulp Fiction of horror. I don't know if that's quite right, but kind of. Very interesting film, interesting script. Be very curious to see how the movie turns out. But Roy Lee is finding all of these smaller titles. And if you wanted to start an incubator at a studio, he probably wants to keep his autonomy. But I don't know where he finds all this great material, but he finds it. And the thing is, the studios now are plucking these indie filmmakers. You know, Colin Trevorrow goes and makes Safety Not Guaranteed, and then he's directing Jurassic World. I don't think that's any way to run a career. I mean, kudos to him because he made a lot of money. Got to get paid. I understand. Good job. I'm not criticizing him, but a filmmaker needs to hone their craft. You know, Martin Scorsese, remember, he was making Big Bad Mama, Boxcar Bertha, you know, Big Bad Mama's not Boxcar Bertha, you know, and the De Palma and all those guys, they were cutting their teeth making these low budget exploitation movies. Coppola did the same thing. People have to hone their craft and get good at it. So, and an IP doesn't have to be hugely expensive, you know, and I think that all the studios need divisions now where they are specifically, and as Roy Lee will tell you, it's really hard to find good material, especially now, because most of the material and the stuff that people are writing isn't good. And I don't want to discourage any screenwriters. Look, when I was reading scripts for a living, as I've told people, 99%, if you had to read 100 scripts, and I know because I had to, if you had to read 100 scripts, you were lucky if one was good. That's not a great ratio, 1%. And it's probably even worse today. But for whatever reason, Roy Lee he knows. He's producing, they wrapped Francis Lawrence's version of The Long Walk, which I can't wait to see. I've wanted to see that. It was a Richard Bachman, who was later revealed to be Stephen King. I bought that paperback. I think I bought that paperback when I saw Phantasm after I came out of the Crossroads Cinema, because there was a bookstore next door. I think that's where I bought it, 1979. I think. I've wanted to see that movie since then. Roy Lee's producing it. Roy Lee has Companion. Don't Worry, Darling was a Roy Lee movie. Strange Darling was another Roy Lee movie. Boy Kills World that we recently saw. Now, you might not have loved all these movies, and all of them didn't burn up the box office charts, but he made Barbarian for $4.5 million, and it made $40 million domestic. Or maybe it was worldwide. I don't know. And by the way, Disney, where the hell's Barbarian on physical media? I know it's Fox, but come on. Where's David Pryor's The Empty Man? Anyway, but let me talk to you about a franchise that has worked. I want to take you back 10 years ago. I want to tell you about an IP that was born 10 years ago. I bet you all can think about what it is that I'm about to mention. What movie came out 4 years ago, or 10 years ago in 2014, that I would consider to be now an IP? John Wick. John Wick came out, made for not a lot of money. Lionsgate movie. Now, Lionsgate, you know, they had the Twilight franchise, the Hunger Games franchise. They were a studio that needs franchises. Well, John Wick is a movie. It was original. Who would have thought John Wick would become a franchise? Who would have? I mean, maybe some people, maybe the people at Lionsgate did. They saw the potential in it. But Keanu Reeves, you know, his career had settled down from the high he hit when the Matrix movies were coming out. You know, he was making lower budget stuff, and he was living a comfortable life, but John Wick catapulted him back up to the top. Now, here's something interesting. So John Wick came out in 2014. John Wick made domestically $43 million. Internationally, it also made $43 million and change, and it made a total of $86 million worldwide. Now, that's not a huge hit, but respectable, because the movie was probably made with marketing costs. I think it was made for even less than $20 million, maybe. And the first John Wick is a banger. Great script, simple concept, great casting, and it really worked. Well, so based on that success, and remember, it only made this was 10 years ago, admittedly, but it only made $86 million worldwide on a spend that was probably around $20 million. That's what studios should be doing. And why they're not all doing it, I have no idea. But John Wick, okay? So how much do you think John Wick 2 made? Remember, 86 million worldwide. 86 million worldwide. 43 domestic and 43 international. John Wick 2. Its domestic earnings, John Wick 2, was 92 million. Domestically, it outgrossed what the first John Wick made internationally. Internationally, worldwide, how much did John Wick actually made? Only 82 million internationally, but that's still almost doubled what it made internationally. So John Wick 2 doubled its domestic take and almost doubled its international take for a grand total of $174 million. Now, I don't have the actual how much the budgets were, but they didn't go up by that much. It's not like they went from Joker, which was made for $65 million, and then they gave them $200 million. What are the economics there? I don't know. I don't know why you do that. But, so, suddenly, John Wick has now got 2 movies. I would call that a franchise, an IP. Will they make a John Wick 3? Well, they did make a John Wick 3. And let's look at those numbers. Remember, the domestic on John Wick 2 was less than $100 million. John Wick 3, the domestic numbers, $171 million. Now, John Wick 3, we're talking 2019. It's only 5 years later. This is the 3rd movie in the franchise. Now, we're not including the time it cost or time it took to make John Wick, but let's say 6 years, every 2 years we get a movie. Domestically, $171 million. Worldwide or internationally, $157 million. Worldwide, $328 million. $328 million. This is a franchise that keeps almost doubling its money. Doing quite well. This is the kind of franchise IP work that every studio, and they should be doing 5 movies like this a year. But as Roy Lee would tell you, it's very hard to find that material because the people, are they writing it and are the studio executives recognizing it? Now let's go to John Wick 4. John Wick 4 domestically. Now this is interesting. So domestically, John Wick 3 made $171 million domestically. John Wick 4 domestically made $187 million. So only about $10 million more. Only about $10 million more than John Wick 3 made. But internationally, so John Wick 3, so internationally John Wick 2 made $82 million. Internationally, John Wick 3 made $157 million. Not quite, but almost doubled. For a worldwide take of $328 million. And it keeps going up, 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 up. But they're not jumping up and spending $200 million on this franchise because they don't need to. But those movies look beautiful. They are gorgeous. So let's go to John Wick 4. John Wick 4 makes $187 million domestically. What did John Wick 3 make? $171 million. Almost the same amount of money. John Wick 4 internationally made $253 million for a worldwide gross of $440 million. John Wick 3 had a worldwide gross of $328 million. So John Wick 4 made $100 million more worldwide than Chapter 3. This is what we should be seeing from franchises. Franchises that are well managed, that the people making them understand. So for Lionsgate, and then lest we not forget, The Continental, there's a TV show based on the John Wick franchise, and we are getting another John Wick movie in, I think, June of 2025, Ana de Armas in Ballerina. So you now have 5 John Wick movies and a TV series. 5. And in only, well, it'll be 11 years in 2025 since the franchise started. So you've got 5 movies and a TV show. And think about it. If a studio could do that, and they could have multiple franchises running like that, that's a good business model because you're taking home a lot of profit. It's possible to make, remember, a studio only takes home half, whatever the box office gross is, the studio takes home half of that. So if you made a movie that costs $200 million, okay, and you have to pay studio overhead, you have to pay marketing costs and all those things, $200 million, and it makes $800 million, right? Well, you've spent $200 million, and if it makes $800 million and the studio takes half that back, you get $400 million back. All right, so theoretically, if you talk about marketing costs and you talk about studio overhead, you only got $200 million, call it profit, but that's after marketing costs and studio overhead and whatever else is taken into consideration. So when you look into that, you could make more profit. The studio can take home more money from, say, a John Wick franchise than it could from even a larger franchise, depending on how much a movie cost. So it's possible in terms of what the profit is. Like everyone is always telling me about the Star Trek movies, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies. Well, Rob, those movies, they made more money than all the other Star Trek films did. Okay, but how much did they cost and how much did it cost to market them? Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan cost like, $11 million, but it made $75 million. That's a profitable film. And you're taking home a lot of change. But if you've made a Star Trek movie that costs $200 million or more, like Into Darkness did, and it makes $500,000 or $500 million, you don't get that much money back. So what is more profitable? What is the percentage of profit at scale? So what I don't understand is Hollywood now is your sequel crazy, and it's getting a little ridiculous. Top Gun Maverick opened the doors. Let's make sequels to movies that are 40 years old. Well, you're making sequels to movies that, okay, a whole generation's grown up with and watched them on cable and watched them on physical media and watched them now on streaming. So people know Beetlejuice. I mean, I dare say, without Beetlejuice, there'd be no Hot Topic. A whole store. I think Beetlejuice took goth culture and gave it to teenage girls. Even though, to be fair, teenage girls are goths too, but it was more of a palatable. It was goth culture for the suburbs, as opposed to goth culture for the cities. I'm somebody's going to get pissed at me for that, but whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's just that Beetlejuice. Now, here's the thing. It was never going to be as groundbreaking as Beetlejuice was, and it was fine, and it made money for the studio. Probably more money than they thought it was going to make, because originally it was going to go direct to streaming, so it was a smart idea. Warner Brothers has had a couple of those. Evil Dead Rises, or Evil Dead Rise. That was going to be a streamer too. I don't understand why Hollywood is not making a more concerted effort to be inspiring new filmmakers. Find the new Robert Eggers, find the new Ari Asters, find the new Damien Chazelles. Go out there, and rather than spend $200 million, I mean, if you make a Joker movie and it makes $1 billion, but it costs $65 million, don't go open up the studio coffers and just go make a $200 million sequel. I mean, Todd Phillips would get it. He made Hated, G.G. Allen, the G.G. Allen documentary. If you haven't seen Hated, yeah, it's the same Todd Phillips. Go and watch that documentary, and you'll be like, this guy was given money by a studio? Well, he made The Hangover. You can watch his trajectory. Same thing. But we need a concerted effort, I think, on the part of Hollywood studios to start figuring out ways to foster new, young, burgeoning talent, and not talent based on DEI requirements. Look, the people who want to make movies will make movies. You can't. This is why I've never understood. I guess I don't understand. No one has ever stopped anybody from making a film. It doesn't mean you're talented enough to make a movie, but it doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what your religious preference or your sexual preference or your pronouns are. If you can make a fucking movie, Hollywood will figure out a way to exploit you and crush your dreams. However, if your movie's good, nobody cares what color you are. When Spike Lee made She's Gotta Have It, do you think people were going like, well, we're not going to hire this guy because he's black? No, he had a brand new voice that no one had seen. He made an exciting independent movie, and boom, 2 movies later, he made Do the Right Thing. And you think about, Spike Lee is pretty damn versatile. He made Inside Man. And people forget it. I know Denzel Washington's in it, but so is Clive Owen, and so is Jodie Foster, and so is an amazing cast. Go watch that movie. That's a great thriller. Spike Lee is an incredibly talented filmmaker. He's very versatile, too. If anything, he was pigeonholed as being a black filmmaker. And I understand that he was making black-themed movies because he was making movies about his own experience that he was transposing, whether it was School Days, whether it was Mo Better Blues, or take your pick, Girl 6. I mean, he was making what he knew. And more power to him. But that doesn't mean he couldn't make something else. And he did. The same man that can make Malcolm X and Do the Right Thing can also make Inside Man. Great filmmakers should not be pigeonholed. They can do anything. Great storytellers can do anything. And that's what the studios should be doing. They should be looking for the next John Wick, not the next billion-dollar franchise. They got that covered. But what if you get 10 movies that make a $50 to $100 million profit every year? 10 movies. That's a good business. I mean, and it also future-proofs what you're doing. And remember, if you make great movies, they go onto your streaming services, and that's what drives subscriptions, even though it's silly to think that subscription should be something you're chasing after, because there's only a finite number of people on this planet that can subscribe to streaming services. Anyway, I would make a call for all the studios to put aside, like, I don't know, make $100 million, take $100 million bucks and do what Blumhouse does, but at a bigger scale. Blumhouse will make $5 million movies. Some of them will hit, some of them won't. The studios should start a division at Warner Brothers. I mean, everything's a mess now. But when the getting's good, set up a program, put $100 million aside and go make 5 $20 million movies. The problem is there's nobody at the studios that know which 5 movies they should make, because they don't know how to recognize good stories. They don't know what that is anymore, which is too bad. But I would say this. I mean, I was involved. I produced a movie for Warner Brothers, for Joel Silver and Warner Premiere, The Hills Run Red. We brought an original script in, Dave Parker and I, and Dave Scowery wrote it. It was given to me by a company called Fever Dreams in New York City. Carl Morano and John Dombrow brought it to my company, and we fostered it, and we nurtured it, and we went and made it. Warner Archive had a, well, I keep saying Warner Archive. It's Warner Premiere had a, they were going to make 10 movies with Silver Pictures. And at first, the first thing they did was Return to House on Haunted Hill, directed by Victor Garcia. And then they were going to make 9 more movies. And our film, The Hills Run Red, was the second of those 9 movies. And, you know, it was a movie that had a reported budget of $4 million. They probably took $1 million away for Silver Pictures. But then we went and shot it in Bulgaria. It came out. They allowed me. I went to the studio and said, can we take it to film festivals? They were like, why would we do that? It's a direct-to-video movie. I said, no. We got to go to Sigis. Dave Parker went to London. We went to a few film festivals and showed it. It was great. But we thought that since they liked it, we'd get to make another. And then they scrapped the program because Warner Brothers is like, well, you know, why do we make these little direct-to-video movies when, you know, for $4 million, or we make them, and when we can make, why bother? I'm like, why bother? Because now, remember, Hollywood, everyone listen to this. Every movie now has the same size thumbnail on your streaming service. No one anymore thinks about the fact that, oh, Apocalypse Now looms large. All movies are equal on streaming services. All of them. All that matters is, are you going to entertain your audience? That's all that anybody cares about. No one even the film culture doesn't exist anymore where we're looking at things and deciding which movie has more credibility than another. Your audiences today don't care. So the thing is, if you find talented people, you're going to find talented people that are going to make you some great movies for a lower price. But give those filmmakers, if you're at a studio, find that $100 million, have a concerted effort to make 5 $20 million movies. Roy Lee will tell you, even that's hard, because how are you going to find 5 great scripts? Well, that's part of it. Get to work, chop, make it happen. It'll help everybody in the long run, you know. And I'll tell you something. One of the great movies of the year is Anora. No one knows what it is, and that's what tells me that studio marketing people don't know. You want to market Wicked? People are like, oh, the marketing of Wicked is so great. Give me a fucking break. You know what? I could have marketed Wicked. I could have, and because Wicked is a known commodity. You don't have to market Wicked. You just have to tell people when it's opening, and they'll show up. So when people are like, oh, the marketing for Wicked was so great. Oh, give me a break. The marketing for it was done on Broadway, and it's been being done for 20 years. The problem is now you look at all these great little movies like Anora, which should be making a lot of cash. It's a film that should be making a lot of money, but it hasn't been marketed well. It's probably one of the best movies of the year, if not the best movie of the year. And no one knows to go to see it. And you know what? That movie is wildly entertaining. It's as entertaining as any other movie that's going to come out this year. And yet, no one's going to see it because no one knows it's there. And the only reason people are flocking to these sequels is, of course, I understand from a business standpoint, they know them all, so why not go make them? Why not make sequels? But how much did Gladiator 2 end up costing, Paramount? Is the reported budgets true? Are we looking at $300+ million for that movie? There's no way in God's green earth that Gladiator 2 will ever turn a profit, that anybody, why would you make that movie for that much money? I understand. But even known properties, Joker, Folie à Deux, and Gladiator 2, that kind of money should never have been spent on those two movies. I know it's Monday morning quarterbacking. Gladiator is one of my favorite movies of the last. I mean, I love that movie. I can quote it chapter and verse. Love it. But even if I was running Paramount, I'm like, we're not going to greenlight a Gladiator sequel. I know they went through COVID and all that, but still, give me a break. Give me a break. I mean, it's doing well, and I'm happy it's doing well, but it's not doing well when you look at how much was spent on it. They need to make $1 billion, and somebody somewhere is probably thinking, I think Gladiator 2, it'll make $1 billion. No, it would never make $1 billion. I mean, I'll bet you that Passion of the Christ Resurrection that's coming out, another sequel, by the way, who would have thought that Jesus Christ himself would be in what's probably going to be one of the bigger sequels of next year? By my count, there are 23, at least 23 sequels coming out in 2025. Some are good. Some I'm looking forward to. Some are not going to be good. We'll see. 23 sequels. 23 opportunities that somebody could have made an original IP, like the John Wick franchise that over 10 years just kept making more money for Lionsgate. Which, by the way, Lionsgate, their new website, go to it. I'm writing articles for them. I wrote little essays on both Apocalypse Now and The Conversation. Check those out. But anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to say. What do you guys think? Let's look into what people are saying. If anybody's saying anything, let's see. I know I started late. Oh, people are saying stuff. Is that MTH? Is that Myth H? Myth H says, would Patrick Stewart have been a better Gandalf? No, he would have brought something different to it. But Ian McKellen, no one could have that glimmer in his eye. A wizard is never late. The thing about Patrick Stewart is I think Patrick Stewart, even though he's been great on extras, I think there's a seriousness to Patrick Stewart. And even though Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, when they were on social media and doing things together and putting out, it's a lot of fun. But Ian McKellen was clearly leading that friendship. I think Ian McKellen was a fantastic Gandalf. And maybe somebody else could have played it, but I don't think as well. Myth H goes on to say, Nomad's blast equals 90 torpedoes. Spock says they can take 4 more hits, but the 5th will collapse the shields. That equals 450 torpedoes. Ridiculous. What he's referring to is a second season original series, or Star Trek, as we call it, episode called The Changeling. But if you think about it, that could be exponential. I mean, you got to figure out how do we reconcile that. Could be different. I don't think it's necessarily it equals it might be the concussive force, but I don't know. But yeah, that's a lot. But I don't know. That's a mystery. Maybe it was solved in one of the Best of Trek books. Our friend Mario Lopez has been a member of the channel for 44 months. Mario, please say hello to your mom for me. Mario lives in Portugal. Tom Jr. Jackson. Tom, I just got a letter in the mail from you today. I haven't opened it yet, but I did get it. Tom Jr. Jackson has been a member for 49 months and says, happy birthday, Rob. Where is Deep Throat on 4K? Where is John Candy's Only the Lonely on Blu-ray? Did you get my card yet? Hope you're well, sir. I got your card today, but I have not opened it. I was going to open it on this show, but I left it upstairs. I forgot. I'll do it. I'm going to do a show tomorrow, and I will open it then. Marco Escondolas, how are you, sir? Good to see you. I remember the original Pirates did okay at the box office. Its fan base grew to catapult Pirates 2 into big money. It also ruined the summer for my beloved Superman. Yeah, I know. But yeah, that's another thing. Who would have thought that Pirates of the Caribbean would have worked as a movie based on a theme park ride? Well, aside from Jerry Bruckheimer. But yeah, that was good stuff. B Things sends in a super chat and says, I love IPs like Star Wars and Star Trek, but those have already been made. I'd much rather write and draw my own stories as comics than make good use of my film degree where making sequels is winning. I agree. but that doesn't mean you can't make something new on your own. I mean, now we have worldwide distribution right here on YouTube if that's what you want to do. So I would say do both. Don't give up. Just keep making your own stuff. And who knows, the comics you're making might be the movies of the future or the TV shows of the future. You never know. John says audiences are not voting with their wallets too. Well, I know, it's too bad. Yeah, it's look, I think audiences want to see good things, but they just don't know, unlike people that are on YouTube following film YouTube or film Twitter or whatever. Most people are not anticipating what's coming out every week the way we are tracking or clocking all this stuff, because they don't know. But if they do know, Shonen Kaiju says Anora is indeed a fantastic movie. Yes. And I think the general audience would love it. I think it could be a breakthrough hit if people knew it was there. And the fact that they don't is problematic. Now, I understand it costs a lot of money to market films these days, but it also, look, you got to think about movie marketing not the way they traditionally think of it, but think of it as, guerrilla warfare tactics, asymmetric marketing, but you need clever people to know how to do that. You don't have to blaze your own trails, but they don't, unfortunately, which is, I wish that we had more like that, more of those things happening. Unfortunately, we don't, which is tough. I wish we had more. I wish we had more of that, because a movie like Anora deserves a huge audience. I mean, it is a crowd pleaser of a film. It's a joyous crowd pleaser of a movie, and it's too bad that not more people are seeing it. Sheriff Carl sends in a tip and says they should make a Double Deep Impact where two asteroids are hurtling towards Earth and only Chad and Alex, a la Double Van Damme's, can stop them. I'd pay double to see that. It was really a pleasure talking with you on the 1000th. Congrats on True Noir, dude. Well, tell me congrats after you've heard it. But thank you, man. It was great to meet you too. We're going out. Tack sends in a tip and says, reading the Lord of the Rings books for the very first time and having a wonderful time. Tolkien's prose and sense of pacing is incredible in every payoff the story gives. Can't wait to finally watch the films too. Always wanted to read the books first. Worth it. Ooh, you're going to have a fun time. Just know that obviously the Lord of the Rings films are an adaptation of the books. And if you're loving the books and you become a Tolkien fanatic, Professor Tolkien knew what was up. But obviously, look, I'm just going to tell you right now, Tom Bombadil is not in the Lord of the Rings. I know. I'm just telling you. Let's see. Darth Plato says, how are John Wick movies different from Death Wish movies or the main characters themselves? Well, I think they're maybe not. Those movies are classic movies. I mean, they're about revenge. In one case, in Death Wish, Charles Bronson is avenging his family. And in the John Wick movies, John Wick's avenging at first his dog. But the thing about the John Wick movies that are really interesting, that I think move beyond that, and what makes, is that they take place in a universe. The John Wick universe with the hotels and the assassins. I mean, who knew there were so many assassins in the world? But that world makes the John Wick movies even more interesting, because there's only so many times you can watch one dude shoot other dudes in the head. But yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something to think about. And I do really, I enjoy the John Wick movies. First of all, nothing surpasses the first John Wick film, because it had a simple setup and a payoff. And they keep, in the sequels, they keep upping the ante, and they took, the John Wick franchise is an interesting thing, because the universe that John Wick exists in it's kind of like what happened to Star Wars. The John Wick story was universal. He lost his wife. He left a certain life behind, which was being an assassin. the last thing his wife left him was that dog, and these people from his old life ended up messing with him, and then he gets sucked back in. So what the John Wick movies have become is now all about the universe, the John Wick verse. And the simple story of a man seeking revenge, a heartbroken man seeking revenge and having to be pulled back into his life is such a classic tale, whether it's a Western story, whether it's an urban revenge story. It was so classic, but then the universe is so interesting. You have to jump back into that universe and continue on and figure out ways to keep John Wick in it, which they've done a pretty good job of doing, but there's only really so many stories that you can tell. Which I understand. Anti-Derivative Jill, who I streamed with yesterday, we talked about For All Mankind, just became a member of this channel. And I thought we had a great conversation. It was great. I love being on that channel. It was a lot of fun. So go out and check out Anti-Derivative Jill's channel. She and I definitely see eye to eye on Star Trek. But yeah, so that's, look, how do you keep a franchise going? I think George Miller did a fantastic job. Like if you look at the 5 Mad Max movies that we have now, they're all variations on a theme, but they're all pretty interesting, and he's directed or co-directed all of them, which is fun. I mean, when it comes to sequels, if you believe the story told about, look, James Cameron had made Terminator and dazzled everybody. Then he went to Fox and pitched them on Aliens. Like Fox wasn't like necessarily looking to make a sequel to Aliens. Maybe they'd been trying, but even back in the 80s, how do you make a sequel to Alien? Well, James Cameron came in and apocryphally he pitched it to a room full of execs and apparently a chalkboard. He wrote the word alien, and then he wrote an S and put 2 lines through it to make it a dollar sign. Sold to the man and sold to Mr. Cameron. But he was a great accomplished filmmaker, and he took something. I mean, I wonder now if a studio wouldn't say to James Cameron, well, you know, that idea that you had might not have worked, but it did work, and rest is history. And the problem was what ended up happening with the Alien franchise is a perfect example of how a franchise goes wrong, because Alien 3, if you watch Charlie de Lauzirika's incredible documentary, I think it's called Rape and Ruin, that's on the Alien anthology, especially if you get the Blu-ray anthology where it was updated from the DVDs. It's an incredible documentary and an account of how a movie goes awry. You know, a lot of these franchise movies, the same was true, by the way, of Lethal Weapon 3. Lethal Weapon 3 was a total mess because they didn't have a full script when they went into production. And they have that problem with a lot of, I mean, my whole thing would, if I had my druthers and I was running a studio, if I had a great franchise, like let's say somebody put me in charge of Star Wars, the first thing I would do if Disney buys Star Wars for $4 million is I would call up my favorite filmmakers to come in and have a meet and greet, whatever. I'd sit them down and say, look, we're going to make a new Star Wars trilogy, and I want to get my favorite filmmakers to do it. And are you interested? And then I would do the same thing with my favorite screenwriters. I'd go get like, you know, Steve Zalian, you know, people like that. And I would just get my favorite filmmakers and my favorite showrunners and bring them all in and talk to them and say, okay. And I put together like, you know, like they have story groups or whatever, and put together somebody or people and bang out ideas and find the James Cameron who wants to come in and go, I've always wanted to make, like David Fincher would probably, if you first went to David Fincher when Disney got Star Wars, Fincher worked at ILM on Return of the Jedi. You could go to him and be like, dude, would you like to make a Star Wars movie? Or Paul Thomas Anderson or somebody like that. Bring in these filmmakers that love Star Wars and find out what they want. Go to the filmmakers. Don't decide. If you're the corporation that doesn't know how to tell a story and doesn't know how to make a movie, and yet you're going to start passing muster or making decisions on who passes muster to work for you, isn't that kind of not great? I don't know. I would go to the source and go find the James Cameron who has the idea for Aliens and use that as your bellwether. Be like, that's what I need, man. I need somebody like that. I don't know. That's the way I think it should be done. I just don't think that there's enough people in Hollywood now who are necessarily able to do that, especially at the studio level. The reason why making sequels is easy, because nobody has to assume the risk. If you're making a sequel, the material itself is the risk. And that's, unfortunately, getting somebody at a studio that's ballsy, their job's on the line. They can't. In our corporate world, where's that great creative spark? Corporations are not storytellers. Storytellers are storytellers. Corporations need the storytellers to make the things that they need to sell. And unfortunately, it's tough business. It's hard to come up with something good. But on that note, I'm going to end this stream, the first stream. This is, it's like the year is one. You know, it's like having Rosemary wanting to take care of her son. Or not really. It's different than that. But anyway, kind of a scatterbrained stream tonight, but I'm having fun. I hope you are. I want to thank you all for watching. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to do the stream tomorrow. And if you have a YouTube channel or you have an outlet that you would review True Noir, remember, True Noir is exactly what I'm talking about. It's my project. It's my company's project. And my ass is way out on the line. And I never thought I'd be making an audio drama, but I went all in. I went all in with my creative chips. And I talk so much mad shit on the internet about everyone else's work that I'm putting myself out there. This is the thing that is most me, even more than free enterprise, because I had total creative freedom. So we'll see. Maybe I'm going to crash and burn, Mav. Or maybe, just maybe, something maybe special, I think it's special, has come out of it. But write me at rmburnett1701@gmail.com. And if not, you can purchase it. And please do, even if you review it and watch or listen to the listener, please tell everybody to get it. Because, yeah, it'd be nice to, if we make some money, we could too make a sequel. But we've got 19 novels to adapt. But anyway, I know audio dramas are not everybody's thing, but I promise you, this audio drama is like listening to a movie. It really is. That was my goal. And Max Allan Collins' scripts are great. And on that note, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better night, have a better day, have a better life. Thanks for watching. Oh, wait, hang on. I have to come back. Wait, I'm coming back. Do you mind if I come back? Coming back. B Things sent in a super chat. I couldn't let this thing hang. B Things says, I'm reading the novelization of Star Trek The Motion Picture for the first time. What are your thoughts on the new humans? Okay, B Things, this is a very interesting question. Everyone knows that Star Trek The Motion Picture is my favorite Star Trek movie. Do I think it's the best Star Trek movie? Well, to be honest, yes. But I know, especially the new 4K Director's Edition. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan is probably the best movie. It's just not my favorite. So for those of you who are interested, Gene Roddenberry did indeed write the novelization for Star Trek The Motion Picture. And it's bonkers. If you ever wanted to see what Gene Roddenberry's pure, unfiltered Star Trek universe was like, read the novelization of Star Trek The Motion Picture. And he gets into a lot of wacky stuff like new humans and the fact that Captain Kirk's mother had a love instructor. I'll tell you what I think about all that stuff. I loved it. Because if you extrapolate where humankind, human culture was going, and look, one of the cool things about Star Trek The Motion Picture that people forget, Star Trek went off the air in 1969, and Star Trek The Motion Picture came out. By the way, do you know what's happening in 2 days? 2 days is December 7th. I know most of you would say that is a day that will live in infamy. That's the day Pearl Harbor was attacked. Well, I'd like to take that back, and I've been celebrating another December 7th event. On December 7th, 1979, Star Trek The Motion Picture opened. And I was there. I was in line. I went. You've heard me tell that story a million times. But yeah, so it's the 45th anniversary of Star Trek The Motion Picture. If you've never seen it, do yourself a favor and the director's edition is streaming, the new 4K director's edition. It is not perfect. There are things in that director's edition, I think that my friends who helped do that, who put it together, I think that they took things out that they shouldn't have. And they say, well, that's the way Robert Wise wanted it. No, it's not. It's just things you didn't like. Come on, be honest. There's things I would put back. One day I'll do my definitive Star Trek the Motion Picture cut. There's just a few little things here and there. But do yourselves a favor and watch it. I think the movie will surprise you. It's no longer the slow motion picture. It no longer should have the bad rap. It's the most Star Trek movie of all the Star Trek movies that are made. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan's a great movie, but Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan has its roots more in literature, like Moby Dick, than it does in classic Star Trek. And which is fine. Love it. But, the monster maroons are peacoats, Navy peacoats that you'd wear on like the conning tower of a submarine if you're talking to Marco Ramius or you're smoking a cigar with Gene Hackman in Crimson Tide. Star Trek the Motion Picture, though, if you look at it, it's probably the most like a Star Trek episode. And it's not like, it's like the serious, it's like the Doomsday Machine, Immunity Syndrome kind of Star Trek episode, which I loved. And anyway, watch it. 2 days, celebrate its 45th anniversary. And that's, you know what? I just realized I'm going to do that. I'll do another show about Star Trek the Motion Picture on Saturday. Why not? I'll do a Robservations tomorrow and Saturday, and we'll talk Star Trek the Motion Picture. So Be Things, love that book. I don't know if you said you're still reading it. Great stuff. Anyway, that means I'm going away now. For real this time. I'll see you guys later.